On Wednesday night into Thursday morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that he was authorizing what he deemed a special military operation, and this was widely interpreted around the world by the U.S. and its allies as essentially, launching an invasion of Ukraine. And what we've seen across the day on Thursday is Russian forces, via airstrikes, via troop movements, have essentially started to attack various Ukrainian cities, including the capital of Kiev. Defense officials in the U.S. are warning that Russia is planning to decapitate the government of Ukraine and potentially replace it with its own government down the road. So there's a lot of concern about, that Russia's not just going to stop with sort of a few attacks in eastern Ukraine, where Putin recognized these independent republics earlier in the week, but that in fact Russia is going to move more aggressively deeper into Ukraine, potentially try and replace the government there and basically occupy the country. And so what we saw on Thursday afternoon is President Biden, in coordination with allies in Europe, announced another round of sanctions against Russia.
We've now sanctioned Russian banks that together hold around $1 trillion in assets. We've cut off Russia's largest bank, a bank that holds more than 1/3 of Russia's banking assets by itself, cut it off from the U.S. financial system. And today, we're also blocking 4 more major banks. That means every asset they have in America will be frozen. This includes VTB, the second largest bank in Russia, which has $250 billion in assets.
The Biden administration, in coordination with European allies, essentially want to crack down on Russia, try and squeeze the economy, essentially create a lot of pain for the Russian people and for the Russian government to carry out this operation in Ukraine and really kind of cut Russia off from the rest of the world. Time may not be on Ukraine's side, so it'll be interesting to see how patient people are willing to be and how quickly these sanctions really kind of sink in, and whether they really change course for Vladimir Putin or Russia. Over the coming days, I think things to monitor will be essentially how far and how aggressively Russian forces push into Ukraine. Do they occupy the capital city? Do they occupy other sort of major cities in Ukraine? That's certainly something to watch for how quickly they're able to advance. Another thing to watch will be, are there calls for additional sanctions? There have been a couple things that President Biden has not announced yet, but hasn't taken off the table. One of those being directly sanctioning Vladimir Putin himself. And then lastly, I would say we've seen Ukrainian officials call for specific steps from the US and its allies, whether it's to declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine to kind of protect Ukrainian airspace, to provide additional military help. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, and something to watch for, what the Ukrainian officials are essentially asking for from the U.S. and its allies, whether the U.S. and its allies respond to those things or if they kind of wait for these initial sanctions to take effect and see what effect they have. It's sort of a rare instance where I think for the most part, we've seen world leaders kind of unified in condemning this Russian invasion of Ukraine. Even world leaders who have not, maybe explicitly condemned it. For example, in China, they've still sort of expressed some discomfort or unease with what Russia is doing here. So President Biden has really, in recent days, tried to essentially be forthcoming, be transparent with the American people that there are potentially some ripple effects from this conflict between Russia and Ukraine that will hit the American people. The biggest one being potential increases in gas prices. So Russia controls a lot of the energy market, a lot of the gas market for Europe. And by trying to isolate them, by sanctioning them, certainly there's a risk that Russia then ratchets up the price of gas and oil. Prices will go up, essentially, is the risk, because it will upset global markets. We've already seen that a little bit with the price of a barrel of oil going up on Thursday. And then the other thing to watch for is the potential of cyber attacks, depending on how this escalates. President Biden talked about the risk of cyber attacks on U.S. companies, especially those that work with the government. So certainly cyber attacks is another area where, depending on how this escalates and depending on what route this takes in the coming days, that's certainly another risk, I think, that U.S. officials are certainly on the watch for.